Hello there, my name is Glen Jennings. I am a communications specialist at HDI. That means that I am responsible for a lot of communications projects, such as blog articles and things like that. I also design a lot of graphics for Merge. So if you are following HDI on social media or Merge, you have probably seen some of my work in blog articles or things like that. I do a lot of interviews and blog posts and things like that, and what's really helpful with that is that I have a background in journalism, which gives me a lot of interview skills and things like that. So I use a lot of the skills that I cultivated in 5 or 6 years doing newspaper work, much the same way I interview people, I write stories about them. And I think that some of those stories are some of the most powerful tools we can have to learn about others, to help others. So for me, creative writing is also a massive outlet, but it also it's a way for me to express creativity, but it's also something that I feel can be a powerful tool for other things. One of the things I'm writing now is a horror story starring an autistic protagonist. The whole thing is set in this town where everyone is unnecessarily hostile to you for no reason that you can discern. It's kind of this idea of give someone an autistic viewpoint through which they can understand this. And there are a few autistic authors kind of working in similar spaces, but I really love having this as a way to express creativity. I really love having it as a way to make something that is my own and that is indebted to some of the things that I grew up loving and indebted to a lot of the stories that have had an impact on me, but still something that is a powerful expression of who I am as well. And it's clear that people have some stereotypical vision of it in their head. Perhaps they think Sheldon from The Big Bang Theory or something like that. But it's probably not accurate, and 2, it casts doubt. So I guess the big first thing is, if one of your coworkers is autistic and talking to you about their experience, believe them, listen to them, respect people for who they are. I actually got called at a previous job the Arsler once by some coworkers who I'd called on the phone, who didn't know I was still there and didn't know I was still on speaker. And I never did anything about it, but I still regret that to this day of not standing up for myself there. It is vitally important for people to be willing to listen to autistic people, be willing to treat them with respect, and be willing to not treat them as other, and be willing to be upfront with us and tell us that our voices are valued and heard. I am autistic and I grew up autistic, and it's one of those things where if you grow up in the public school system or really anywhere, you notice how people treat you differently, and you notice how there are ways in which life is harder for you. And I remember I dealt with a lot of bullying and I dealt with a lot of difficult time in my school days growing up. My mom had to really pull some strings and really leverage my IEP to get me the support I needed. And there were times when it felt like my teachers were not as confident in me as they were in my peers, and felt like I wasn't destined for good things the same way my peers were. I think at some points we were outright told that my teachers thought I would never make it to college. So for me, this is work that is incredibly personal. I want to make sure that one day no one like me has stories like this. Stories of having to fight harder than their peers. Stories of having their teachers just doubt them needlessly, when they are just as capable and have just as much potential as anyone else. Stories are the tools by which we have always learned and taught and shared and connected. And so it's this way of taking this passion I've had since I was in high school and taking this love of storytelling and bringing them together and using that to help make the world a better place. There are many times where I did feel like there was something wrong with me. There were many times when I felt like I was broken or defective somehow. And it took me a long time to get that out of your head. You have to learn to see yourself in a different way from what everyone's been telling you for a long, long time. I remember that I've had one teacher whose assignments were, it was an English class and it was my best class. But because the class required binder checks and me to keep an organized record of warm-up activities that my handwriting just could not keep up with, the way that she had us do them, I just couldn't write by hand fast enough. I almost failed the class at one point, despite the fact that she said I was legitimately an excellent student in the subject matter. So it's these areas where it's like, it feels like school is not designed to reflect the different ways that people learn and express what they know and express their intelligence, that can really push back against the way that some people work and the best ways that they can do their work. I was having pencils thrown at the back of my head up until the day I graduated. When your classmates say things like, "He's so annoying, he has to be doing this on purpose," it is incredibly isolating, and it is incredibly harmful to your sense of self, your sense of who you are, your sense of what your value is. I was depressed. I was trying my best to figure it out. But there were a few things that really, I think made a huge difference. One of them was I started getting involved with other autistic people. HDI's very own Bev Harp ran a group for autistic teenagers that was just like a social group. We'd meet in Lexington or Louisville every once in a while and just hang out. And it was freeing to be in a place where I knew I wouldn't be judged for my autistic traits. One of the first books I remember was Look Me in the Eye by John Elder Robison. It was one of the first times I was exposed to the idea that you could be proud of being autistic. When I was in high school and in college, I was a massive theater kid. I started on something called the speech team, which is competitive public speaking, and I am very grateful to have done that, but I built up a lot of skills that helped me a whole bunch down the road. And I think having that safe haven, this place where I could do something I loved with people who felt okay to be myself around, was incredibly liberating. Because I was also a couple years ago diagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorder. And I went 28, 29 years without ever getting a diagnosis for it and without ever getting much in the way of help. It's one of those things where there are times when I feel like it should have been caught earlier. Don't judge the student by their inability to do things the way you would do them. Figure out the way that they do them and the way that makes sense to them. And everyone has different weaknesses and strengths, of course. I was an absolute wizard at my English classes and absolutely the worst at math. You have to be willing to embrace the different ways that people learn and the different ways that people share their intelligence. You have to be willing to recognize that what intelligence may look like to you isn't necessarily the only way it can be displayed. I think that schools need to desperately get better at addressing bullying and desperately need to get better at teaching diversity and recognizing it within the classroom and recognizing that, you know, it's okay to be unconventional. It's okay to be weird. It's okay to be quirky and different, and it's okay to ask for help, and it's okay to struggle sometimes. Since I was a reporter during COVID and had to deal with a lot of changing information very fast, that just makes you really good at figuring out how to explain information in a way that is simple and straightforward. I think a big part of it is sometimes it's important to let it be fun. Sometimes it's important to let it indulge the parts of you that interest you. You learn things that interest you so well. And letting people learn in a way that connects to things that they're interested in is really powerful. And so I feel like we need much more in the way of mental health services in schools, because like if you don't catch some of those things early, then they can make life hard. They can make things harder for a long, long time. I went from feeling like I was cursed to feeling like if somebody gave me a pill today that would make me no longer autistic, I would look straight at them and tell them, no thank you, I am happy as I am.